we come together with open hearts to learn about lived reality at the Texas-Mexico border. It is an honor for me to be able to introduce Sister Norma Pimentel, who is a missionary Sister of Jesus member, and she's the executive director of Catholic Charities, Brownsville, Texas. In the 3 decades that she's been doing this work, she has received numerous awards that recognize the scope of needs being addressed. She has been named one of Time magazine's 100 most influential people in the world. She has received the University of Notre Dame's prestigious Laetare Medal, and in 2015, Pope Francis personally thanked Sister Norma for her work with immigrants. Sister Norma has been the face of compassion and care for more than 100,000 immigrants from along the Texas-Mexico border. Catholic Charities continues to provide emergency food, shelter, clothing, housing assistance, clinical counseling, pregnancy care, medical and legal assistance. With winter soon to arrive, attention to needs grows even more critical. Sister Norma, we are grateful to you for being the human face and hands of Jesus to our sisters and brothers facing such deeply challenging realities. Thank you for being with us.
Thank you, Sister Marie. Thank you, all of you, for inviting me to be part and to share with you what is happening at the border. I thank you for this invitation, and I'm very happy to be here with you to share what I see on a daily basis at the border and the reality that we're seeing right now and continue to see for so long already. And the Encuentro at the border is so important, and so I'm so happy to hear of your interest and your dedication to want to make sure that you are part of this Encuentro, just as our Holy Father, Pope Francis, has invited us, that it is important that we really make that encounter with others, especially those that are at the margins, those that are hurting and suffering, because it's only then that we will truly encounter Jesus in the most people who are suffering. And our immigrant families, children and mothers and parents are truly suffering today because they are fleeing realities in their countries that are so detrimental and so fearful for their lives. So therefore, we see them at our border, and there's a lot of people that are coming and that need our help. And so what is happening today, is a continuation of what has started in almost since 2014, and we started to see the numbers of many families come, especially children, and so this is when we move forward to do something about what we were seeing here in our own communities and at bus station and on the other side of the river in Matamoros and Reynosa here in our own area. But it has been all along through the border from Tijuana, San Diego, all the way to Brownsville, Texas. And so I think that today things have continued, and this new administration has made some changes, but we see that families are still coming and the border is closed. So the reality right now at this present time, and since the last time we were able to talk and share what was happening, is that it continues to be closed. This border in the southern part of the United States is closed, which means that this administration is very slow in opening up and establishing a reality of what this country is willing and able to do to receive the many families that are just on the other side of the river in Mexico. And so what we are seeing right now is large groups of people. And recently, not too long ago, you saw in the news people from Haiti, in Del Rio, in Ciudad Acuña, Del Rio in the US side, where great numbers of people, Haitians, were right there, several thousands of them. And the response of the United States was to find whatever way to hold them from entering, and so the images that we saw back then were so sad, when we saw the Border Patrol in horseback and being aggressively trying to find ways to hold the families and the Haitians from entering the United States. And so it was so sad to see that, because it gave us an image of the Border Patrol and of the United States as if we don't want anyone in the United States, and therefore we are going to hold back anyone from trying to enter the United States. And it's unfortunate, because the truth is that my experience of the Border Patrol is not that. It's a group of men and women who are trying to do their job to protect their country, to know who enters our country, and to process. And I know great men and women in the Border Patrol that actually are caring and actually go out of their way to make sure that these families are cared for correctly. And so the image that we saw on the news and these men on horseback doing what they did was just really was so sad for me to see that, because it doesn't reflect the truth of Border Patrol as a whole. But in any case, it was unfortunate that this was the approach that was taken, and so the families that we were seeing, the many thousands of Haitians in those conditions, waiting in under the bridge right there at the river, and hopeful that they would have a chance to enter the United States, because if any of us has looked a little bit to see what is happening in Haiti, things are really bad there, and very bad, and so there's a reason why they're here, and so I think that before we even consider the fact that we should go out of our way to make sure we stop them or send them back to their country, like many of them were sent back, is really look at why they're here, and so not necessarily to just react as a means of deterrence, as a means of holding back, and in any case, I think that right now what we're seeing at the border is a lot of people like the Haitians, like the Central Americans, the Northern Triangle, Honduras, Guatemala, El Salvador, still coming. To this day, they haven't stopped coming, and they continue to come in caravans. Right now we are hearing that there's a caravan somewhere in the middle of Mexico. They have reached that part, and it seems to be a very large group of families and from different nationalities. It's not just Central America. I'm certain maybe there's some Haitians, maybe there's some people from other countries like South America, maybe Venezuela or Brazil or other places like that. But people are coming, and we're seeing that, and it's not an easy journey for them. It's very difficult. It's very painful. There's the abuse of traffickers, the abuse of the cartel, of gangs, finding ways to just take advantage of these families and hurt them and kidnap them to see if they can. The cities, they've already paid a lot of money that they don't even have. They find ways to come up with money that is borrowed and sell what they have, and then find their way to journey to come to a country they think, they're hopeful that here they will find safety, they will find protection. And so unfortunately, they go through so much hardship along the way. In possibly the stories I hear is they get into these semis or trailers that are put inside, and they can be there for hours and hours without even being able to come out and breathe, and be able to eat or go to the restroom or any kind of things like that. Things that a human being needs to be able to be okay. They're completely abused in the treatment they get and the means that they are able to manage to get themselves to a safe place. And so they're hopeful that arriving to the border and crossing into the United States, that will be their safety. And so unfortunately, many of them don't make it. And if they make it, they end up going through routes that are not safe and expose themselves to more danger. They're in danger along the way. They're in danger when they wait in the Mexican side. And they're even in danger once they cross into the United States. Sometimes if they go and somebody kidnaps them, even in the United States. So we see a problem of this organized crime that is so abusive and so destructive to human life, and especially the most vulnerable, those that our Holy Father is asking us to reach out and encounter and provide with them that sense, that presence of Jesus Christ that is here for them, because we become that presence for them, and we can become present to their lives, and be able to sometimes we don't have an answer, sometimes we don't have the solution to what they want, because the very first thing they want is, they said, please take me with you. Help me get to the United States. Help me be safe. Help me to be on the other side of the river. And we can't do that. And so therefore, what we can do is, because of our presence, we show them that we care. We show them that God is with them, that they are a child of God, simply because they're a human being, and they deserve to be treated with respect and care. And so, as you see behind me, this is the camp in Reynosa, right at the plaza of the city. You cross over to Mexico through McAllen, you will cross the bridge, and just one block away, there's the Plaza of the Americas. This is the plaza in Reynosa. And back in February, the very first group of families started to just stay there and hopeful that maybe they might wait for something, hopefully be able to cross at some point. And because they were sent back by the United States for Title 42. Title 42 is what the previous administration put in place to hold back everybody from crossing into the United States. If you enter the United States, you would just be sent back, because the border is closed due to the pandemic, and therefore everybody is sent back without even being processed. And so what you see behind me is the result of Title 42. Families that have tried to enter the United States are simply just sent back daily, maybe 200-300 of them every single day end up in this place that's behind me. And so you have a square, Plaza Square, with close to almost 3,000 immigrants right there, one on top of the other, basically. There's barely any space to do anything, just barely. One of those little tents may hold 2, 3, 4, even 9 people, because maybe a mother has several kids and she's in there with all of them, and so in the next tent is right next to it. And so there's really no space, and they try to cover themselves with those plastics they throw on top, so just to keep themselves as best they could from the hot sun, and that is so hot, and the children are just after being out there in the hot sun for so long in the day, you see them with blood coming out of their little noses because of how much heat they have to take every day. And so, it's not an easy thing for them to be in those conditions day after day after day, and having to suffer with the temperature changes. Right now we're going into cold weather, and cold weather, even though it doesn't get as cold as it probably gets as cold in your place, it still gets cold for them because it's they don't have protection in no way, so the temperature drops a little bit. It's going to be very cold. It's like we saw that happen in the previous camp in Matamoros when the temperature dropped below 30. It was freezing everywhere in Texas, and sure, the camp suffered even most because those little tents became ice boxes. All the water turned into ice, and the kids were crying at night. And one of the mothers sent me a little video. Said, "Madre, I don't know how to console my little boy. He's crying," and he showed me the little boy crying inconsolably because his little toes were frozen, and he hurt so much. And so, I'm seeing that if we get temperatures like that again, these people in those conditions are going to suffer so much, and so we try to help them by taking them blankets, by finding ways to keep their areas warm, but it's almost impossible to actually warm them so that they don't suffer from the cold weather. And so reaching out to them and crossing things across to them, and it's always an effort that we start to cross like little ants, carrying things across the bridge so that we can give these families whatever we can to make sure that they're okay. But the reality is that right now, what we see is so many families along the other side of Mexico, mostly because the border is closed. And so therefore, there's so many things that people are hopeful and waiting what's going to happen when Title 42 is lifted. And we foresee that should happen before the end of the year, because the only reason it exists is because of the pandemic, and the pandemic is already something that is moving away. And so therefore, at some point, we're going to see this Title 42 lifted. They haven't done so, probably out of fear that it's going to cause a massive migration of people trying to enter the United States. And so therefore, they are waiting as long as they can. I'm saying the administration of this country, trying to make sure that they're prepared to manage and handle. They have some process in place to make sure they can possibly expedite, remove everybody that is crossing over if possible, maybe sending people back to their country. That's what expedited removal is, or send them back to the southern part of Mexico, which is something they're already doing, or finding ways to try to minimize the number of people that are entering the United States and trying to be ready to process them correctly so that we don't have such a massive number of people without knowing what to do with them. And so, of course, we also have MPP, which is the Migration Protection Protocol that is being mandated by the Supreme Court, that this administration must make an effort to reinstate, to find ways to process families to some extent similar to what it was in the previous administration. And so the Biden administration is trying to do their best to figure out how that is going to be happening, and it should happen sometime in this month. That's what we understand, possibly to the end of November. I don't know if they will be successful in accomplishing that, but at the present time, we don't know. We just know that it's going to happen, and it can happen any day, and possibly this month. And what that looks like and what is going to happen with that, we're uncertain. We do know that it means that people who enter the United States will be put in, if they ask for asylum, if they claim credible fear for their lives and they ask for asylum, then they will be put into what is known as MPP, which is Migration Protection Protocol, or also known as Remain in Mexico policy. That means they enter the United States, they ask for asylum, and the United States then starts the process of that asylum claim by sending them back to wait in Mexico. This time around, I'm hopeful that the administration will establish a fair process, even though it's not good that they're going to be sent back to Mexico. simply because Mexico is not safe. Mexico, the families will hurt. Keeping them in circumstances similar to what we see here in this camp is not good. That reality that you see behind me is a camp, a makeshift camp. It's not organized, it's not protected. Those that are interested in wanting to hurt them have access to it, and children and families are hurting by people going in there and infiltrating among them and finding ways to kidnap them, to hurt them, to rape them. It's so unsafe and very terrible situation for families in that conditions. And right now, this camp behind me in Reynosa, it doesn't have any electricity. So at night, once the sun goes down, it becomes pitch black. Anything can happen inside of there, and it's actually happening because it's so dark and so families. I was visiting just recently with some of the families that I took, some sisters, and I stopped and talked to the mothers and the ladies that are there, and I said, how is it here at night? And they said, it's not easy. Besides the fact that it's so hot because they're so crammed together, one on top of the other with all those dark plastics on covering them from the sun, then it becomes so hot during the day because the wind doesn't pass through. So it becomes so hot all night long. So it's very hard to sleep. And then also, they must also be on guard because they said, we have to make sure nobody comes and hurts us. So we take turns in protecting ourselves and making sure that somebody's always awake. And so these are the things that are happening. And so then relying on people like us and many other churches locally from Mexico and from the United States, people, organizations that are kind of figuring out ways to reach out and help them, volunteering to feed them, to provide water for them, to provide the different services that they need. It's all happening, but it's not a guarantee. You know, maybe somebody will get fed in one corner, but it's impossible to feed 3,000 people by just one group, and so other groups may appear later on, and they're constantly getting somebody helping them, but there's no guarantee that everybody's getting the help they need. It may be los más listos, those that are smarter or quicker, and get in line and get ahead of those that are slower to reach out and say, I need your help. And so this is what's happening presently at the border, especially in the Mexican side, is the fact that we need a new space, a space that is safer, a space that is organized and planned so that it's not a matter of how fast and quick you are to get the help that they're given, but everybody gets a proper care and attention. And so this is something that we're working on. I go to Reynosa, I meet with all the leaders of whoever's doing something. I convene them and sit down and talk and say, what can we do? What is it, the things that we can do to move these people from this area that is not safe? It's in the middle of the city, and the city is not happy about having people from Reynosa, from Mexico. They're not happy at all to see this, and they wish they can take their downtown back. This is not a happy sight, and residents from Mexico are very upset to see the fact that they've taken over their city and they just put themselves there and really looks terrible. And so we're working with the local municipality to identify locations that they can provide so that we can then move these families to that location, and we can then provide the services in a more organized way, and that they have a wall that protects them and make sure that they're safer, and so these are the things that now we're working on, and we're hopeful that with our efforts of all of us, we can accomplish this. And so we're in the process of almost finalizing a location that was already selected, and we're making sure that everybody that's going to help goes and provides that help in organizing and distributing, so that to see how many families from that location that we're seeing right now can be moved to this other safe space. And then working with the present shelters, that there's shelters already in existence that already have the shelters full. There's several in Reynosa, and particularly right now, there's several in Matamoros, and I'm sure all along the river border, the Mexicans, there's every single major city like El Paso, Laredo, Tijuana, Arizona, they all have shelters in the Mexican side that are bringing in all these families that are there waiting, and those shelters are packed. I mean, in Reynosa, we have one shelter that was 300 people, and we helped to amplify that and bring the capacity to 1,500 people. And they actually have 1,500 people in Senda de Vida. With our help, we put up a wall of a block and space to be able to place a lot of the families in there. So we actually brought families from the plaza to that location. But because we didn't completely get everybody in that shelter, the plaza went ahead and continued to grow, and you continue to see what we see behind me. And so our hope is that with this new location that we're already finalizing, we will be able to actually move many of, especially the children and mothers, the families who have kids, put them in safer space, areas that need to be protected. And so this is some of the efforts that are going on right now at the border, especially in the Mexican side, because that's where many of the families are, and they need our help. And my plea to the government and to anyone involved in making decisions in the U.S. is please, if we are going to force these families to return to Mexico, to remain in Mexico, in the process of determining whether they have a right to be in the United States or not, let us offer them, let us give them a space that is safe, safe where they're protected while they wait. I think that if we are making policies that are implemented to process people and to hold people from entering the United States so that they can determine whether they have a right to enter or not, to be in the United States, and our policies force them to remain in Mexico, then we must take responsibility for putting them there. Because Mexico is a third world country. It's a country that is honestly right now suffering from the organized crime, that they themselves, the people from Mexico, are not safe, And so we, the United States, when we put measures to say, do not go into Mexico because it's not safe, but yet we send them. When we have processed them and through this new policy of remaining in Mexico, we send them back to that a country that is not safe. And so if we do that, I think that should imply that we should also respond to how to care for and provide the care they need to be able to remain in Mexico while they wait. This new administration is an administration that is giving us that hope, because it's an administration that is taking responsibility in trying to implement a new MPP, a new protection protocol that is responding to doing it right. And that's my hope. My hope is that the response of the new process of migration protection protocol is one that really takes in consideration the reality of the families and what they're feeling, what they're living through, what they're doing, and making sure that it is a real due process, a process where someone who fears for their life leaves their country because of the fact that in their country they're not safe, and truly those families that flee because of the fact that they know that their little one, their little kid, when he reaches the age of 8 years old, he is targeted to be taken. And so a mother will do whatever is necessary, leave her house, leave everything that she has, that she knows that is hers and her family's, leave everything for that child that she knows she will lose if she remains in her country. So the family migrates. That family will go do anything to help that little boy make sure has a chance in life. I think that any parent, any mother can understand this. Any mother will go out of her way to make sure her child is safe. This is what these mothers do. That is what she wants to make sure she gives that little boy a chance in life. And so therefore, they come. And so Migration Protection Protocol, that MPP, is for those moms that fear for the lives of their kids, for those people who have lost somebody in their family or has seen somebody in their community back home killed because of this terrible destruction of life in their country by this organized crime, by gangs, by people that are so heartless and care only about making money, about power, about making sure that they get what they want, with no respect to human life. And therefore, this is what we see, And so I'm hopeful that this new MPP policy that will be put in place will respect and will give these families a chance, that they can apply for asylum and that they will go through a process where a judge will be impartial in hearing the reasons why these people fear for their lives, and that a real process, a real true due process is established for this family, and they have an opportunity to enter the United States and not remain in Mexico longer than they need to, that they are given an opportunity to process them quickly and determine whether they have a real credible fear for their lives. And therefore, this is my hope. And my hope is that this new administration will provide this. That's what I'm hopeful for. I know that I think that we I think that if we were more hopeful that this new administration at the beginning of when they started in January, that things would be different from the start, and they were. Initially, when the Biden administration started, we saw right at the beginning of their administration, the very first thing that happened was that MPP was lifted, And what does that mean? It was such an amazing thing that happened when we saw the camp in Matamoros in our area. That's the city that is south of Brownsville, Texas, is Matamoros, Tamaulipas. That city, we had a camp similar to what we see here, but it was large, but it was a whole park that was taken over right as soon as you cross over to Mexico in Brownsville. You cross the bridge, you see to your left all this park that is right by the river, and it had almost 5,000 people. And so the numbers kind of went up and down during the 2 years that it existed. But what happened was that people suffered so much during those 2 years. And finally, after suffering so much and after going through the most difficult time in their lives, those that remain in that camp, when this new administration came into office, they lifted MPP And these families that were in this camp in Matamoros were given permission to enter the United States through the points of entry, through the bridge. It was the most amazing thing that happened. This administration allowed them to enter, all of them. It was an experience of, for me, it was like Moses parting the how Moses parted the river and God's people was able to cross, that's what happened in Bronzing Matamoros back in the end of February when this happened. People started to cross. We were all crying. We couldn't believe that this was happening, that after so many attempts to cross, I remember this family, it's a beautiful family that I came to be very close to, and I would visit almost daily. And every time that I arrived to Matamoros, to the camp in Matamoros, I remember the little boy, Chuyito, would run to me and hug me and say, Mana Norma, and so just throw himself in my hands. And the mother was pregnant. She was ready to give birth, and she was big. And so I say, Consuelo, Consuelo, it's time. And she said, no, madre, not yet. Todavía no. And I said, yeah, Consuelo, you're ready to deliver. But she wanted to cross into the United States. And she knew that she had to wait until the last moment, because if she attempted to cross into the United States, the Border Patrol will send her back if she was not basically feeling the pains of birth, giving birth. And so she didn't want it to be sent back. She wanted it to be this child that she had was their salvation. It was, she needed to wait for the last moment. And so every day I would go, I would see her, and I say, Consuelo, Consuelo. And she said, no, not yet. Until one day her husband, Pedro, called me at 6 a.m. and said, yeah, madre, it's time, we're crossing right now. And they went to the river. So I got myself to go to the camp that morning, that early in the morning. It was very early, and they crossed, they walked to the edge of the river, barely able to walk. She was already feeling the pains, and she gets right to the river and she falls, and the baby is delivered, just comes out, falls to the ground. It was something that was so tragic, but at the same time so beautiful. The baby was born. She had a beautiful little girl, Andrea. All the women of the camp rushed to the river banks and surrounded her, picked up the baby, put it in a cloth, wrapped her up, and gave it to the mother. So they couldn't cross. They couldn't come into the United States. They remained there at the camp. That happened sometime, before the end of the year. They got to cross when this new administration lifted MPP. It was a beautiful moment to, now they can go. Now they don't have to risk their lives and go into this river and wait until the last moment. They could actually walk across with her little baby in her arms. I remember a story that happened right before this week that MPP was lifted in this administration. And I don't know if I shared it already with you, but it is so significant because it was something so very clear of God's presence in the people that we see suffering in this camp. And so I remember that one of the mothers, Carolina, her little girl, Miley, she one day tells me that, said, sister, my little girl had a dream last night. She said, God told me that, Mommy, we don't have to worry anymore. We're not going to suffer anymore. We're going to be in the United States March 1st. On March 1st, we're going to be in the United States. And so after that day, the mom says she had never worried about, she never complained about anything. We're going to be in the United States on March 1st, so we don't have to worry anymore. We're going to be okay. This was sometime in January that this Miley told the mom, and so the mom shared that with me. Well, when the MPP was lifted, that was the last week in February, was people started to cross. And it got to, everybody was crossing like 100 of them at a time. And everybody was happy and everybody's hopeful. When I'm going to cross, when will I cross? So it got to a point when this family says, sister, what about us? When are we going to cross? And I say, you know what? Let me ask the head of the port, the director of the port, to include you in the list for tomorrow, And so I went to him and I said, can you put this list of families that this mother and this child, and I also included Chuyito and his mother Consuelo and the little baby Andrea and her father Pedro. And yes, of course. And he included them in that list for the following day. So they got all excited and got all ready to cross, and they were on the list. But I told them, make sure you put them at the end of the list because I want to make sure I take them home with me, at least for one night, so I can enjoy their presence at my house and before they go on to where they're going. So he put them at the end of the list. When the day was moving forward, what happened was that toward the middle of the day, he tells me, we're not going to finish them all. We put so many on the list. The last group is going to have to wait for tomorrow. Guess what day was tomorrow? March 1st. Every time I say this, I can't help but get emotional because it's so clear for me. God's presence is there. God present in us, what we're doing. It is his plan to make sure that we don't overlook these families, these children, these mothers who are suffering at the border. He wants us to be there with them, to accompany them, to share in their journey, sometimes just by being present. We give them, we have that encounter, and God reminds us when this MPP was lifted and all these people finally crossed, that it was not the powerful administration that made it happen. It was God. He heard the cry of his people. And he showed us that he is with us. So I say, what is happening today at the border needs all of us to be present, needs all of us to be present in some way. And if it's possible to be present in person, because it's only then that you will truly experience and know, by having that encounter and have an opportunity to meet Consuelo. To meet that mother or that child, that family. That will definitely change your life, will definitely allow you to experience God's presence in a more transforming way. And the way he called us to be present. I am amongst those who are suffering, among those who are strangers, those who need food, those who need to be welcome. And so I think that we're doing that by making sure that we do our part, by speaking up, by making sure we help others see what we see, by making sure that people understand the importance of creating policies that are respectful to human life, but making sure that we are there, even if it's just to share a meal or share just a moment, a smile. It is those moments that we truly live out our faith in a very real way. That grounds us to the human reality of today, of where our people are, where they're suffering, and we're there with them, accompany them in the best way we can. And so COVID, if we talk about COVID has put a part that makes it even difficult because of the fact that it's more on the US side. You know, in Mexico, one of the good things about the camp is that it's open air. So that kind of like COVID somehow does not exist as much in spaces like that because it's open air, you know, it's out in the open. And so I remember back when the camp from Matamoros, everybody crossing to the United States, before they crossed, they needed to be COVID negative. And every single one of them was COVID negative. So that was amazing. But when they cross into the United States, they're put in detention facilities and keep them together. And if anybody has COVID, it spreads it to everybody. And so therefore, we have many of them when they cross into the United States and they're processed, and then we receive them. They're not tested for COVID. So we want to make sure that we do test, that we do provide them a proper care if they are tested COVID positive. So one of the main things that I've done since day one when the pandemic started was making sure that everybody is tested for COVID so that we can then isolate them and put them in quarantine and provide them the care they need and keep them there until they're okay. And so that has been very challenging for us, especially because with the high numbers of people that started to enter the United States after, you know, there was a point where we were getting almost 2,000 people every single day at our respite center in McAllen, Texas. 2,000 people. It's a lot of people. We were able to do it with the help of so many people and being able to build capacity so that the families that are arriving, we would test them for COVID. Those that were positive, we would put them in a hotel room, and that way they would keep them there, and we would just make sure we would send staff and nurses to make sure that they would test again until make sure they were okay. And if they needed help medically, we would provide that. They needed food, we make sure we had food all the time, and anything they needed, whether it was Pampers, milk, whatever it was, we would take it to them at the hotel. That was harder because then we have somebody that was not just with us for one day, but rather for 5, 10, 14 days, you know, and so it was a bigger responsibility and they needed more attention. And so having to do that was definitely more of us to be able to provide that, but we managed it to the point that we had almost 12 hotels along the Rio Grande Valley filled with people that were in quarantine. Got to a point when the numbers that were being released to us were so many of them, and even though it was a percentage, I would say 7-10% positive, which means if we got 2,000 people, that was almost 100 to 100, you know, people that we had to immediately find a hotel space for them. And it came to a point where I just didn't have hotels, you know, and so I turned to the city officials and I said, I need your help. If you don't help, tonight we will have people sleeping in the streets. And so they moved. They actually went ahead and got a immediate response so that everybody that needed to be put, they made a soft side tents and we were able to put them there. And that's how it happened. We were able to handle it with COVID because of that, because the city stepped up and Ansel Duas Park came into existence. And since that day to today, we still have Ansel Duas Park where many of the people who have COVID remain there. And those that don't are brought to our center, the respite center. And so we continue to do that. Our numbers have definitely dropped because since then, the Border Patrol has made strategic moves to be able to either send people back to their country, send people back to the southern part of Mexico or to other locations so that minimize the number of people actually allowed to remain in the United States. So this is where we are right now. We are right at numbers being at 300, 200 daily, but numbers can definitely go up very soon once Title 42 is lifted, which is something that right now we think will happen before the end of the year. And so I don't know how we are with time. Sister, are you almost telling me it's time?
I want to, a little bit. Yes. You know, we could listen to you for days, Sister Norma. Your stories are so moving and your accompaniment is extraordinary. So I just thank you for what you've shared with us this afternoon. It's been very short, not nearly enough time. I know that you could just continue, but we do want to respect your time because we know you have a lot going on, and we also want to respect the time of the folks here. And so there were several questions that came up, during the course of your talk. Unfortunately, we're not going to be able to address all of them, but maybe one of them we can get to this afternoon. And this has to do with, some advocacy work. And the question is, what champions in the government do you recognize that you could suggest for us to get into contact to support your efforts?
Well, the main one that I know and that you can definitely reach out and that this person can guide you in identifying which congressmen or which leaders in our United States can help in moving forward with policies that are more humane, more respectful to life. The one person that I know is Ashley Feasley, and she can definitely give you directions as to who to go to and get guidance as far as furthering this a better response from our Congress and our leaders in the United States. And so I can definitely get that phone number for you and that contact information so that you can follow up with her and she can put you in contact with those that may be of greater help to reach out to, because we definitely need to do that. Yes.
Wonderful. We'll be waiting for that, and then we'll be sure to make that information accessible to folks who are on this Zoom call. Maybe one short one is that, most people have empathy for the migrants that they see and for the terrible conditions that you're talking about, those who are traveling to the border, who are suffering in the camps. Yet many who are not there and who don't have the day-to-day contact that you do feel disconnected, and they have a tendency to say, well, what can we do? How would you respond to those who don't live near the border, who want to help, but don't know how?
There's several ways, and one of them that I would most immediately want you to respond to is that I'm certain that immigrant refugee families are already in communities throughout the United States, and they need help. They need to be welcome. They need to be helped to be integrated into the communities, to be protected, to be offered a community they belong to. And so I think that you can do so much by reaching out to them as well, because they're still they're so away from home and they still need that support. And so I definitely think that's one of the ways you can do that, how you can come together and brainstorm and come together and identify what are the things that we actually can do, and how can we offer that to those that need us. And so I think that that's one of the ways to do that. Others can be to how you reach out to your local leaders in your communities so that you can help them understand the real message of what is happening, and not be guided just by the political agendas that seem to take control over what is happening, and completely disregard our responsibility to the world to provide safety and protection to those who are searching for that. And so I think that we have a responsibility to find solutions at the root causes of migration, and to actually focus on that, to develop to push for work visas that will give people an opportunity to enter the country, because this is something that this country needs. And so that needs to happen. And so we need to get our elected officials to do those kind of things. And then, or come volunteer, you haven't had chance, any chance that you have to come in on a holiday or vacation or a weekend, take advantage of the opportunity and come down and to the border and be part of it, so that when you speak, when you respond, you will respond with a very real reality that you have experienced yourself, and you have better understanding and can convince somebody of what you have seen and what you know is the truth of immigration at the border.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Sister Norma. And at this time, we'll invite Sister Fran Ferder to close our time. As president of the Franciscan Sisters of Perpetual Adoration, I only can extend my deep gratitude for your time and your passion again, and your ministry, Sister Norma. As I was listening to you, I thought of, the scripture passage, the Lord hears the cry of the poor, and the Lord is certainly working through you and many others in hearing the cries of the poor, in their suffering and in their celebrations. So thank you so much. Sister Fran?
Sister Norma, we
Yes.
know that we know that your time is extremely precious, and that many people would give a lot to have a half an hour with you in the same room, just listening to your stories. You've given us that gift this afternoon, those of us who are here, and we feel very privileged to have listened to your experience, not just with our ears, but felt it. It's impossible to listen to you and not have the message seep into our hearts, because clearly it has seeped into yours. You don't just talk about the migrants, about the suffering people. You are on the journey with them, and you invite us to do the same. So I'm just immensely grateful in the name of the Encuentro Committee for your time with us today. Thank you for doing what you do. Thank you for feeling what you feel. Thank you for your tears. Thank you for all the steps you've walked. Thank you for living on both sides of the river, so that we might get a little better glimpse of what that feels like for our migrant brothers and sisters. We look forward to our continued collaboration. Thank you,
friend. Thank you, sisters. Thank you for your presence and for your support and love.